So there's going to be some traffic in the background, and I hope that this machine doesn't pick it up. But I know I've been having some difficulties with some sound. I've just been experimenting. But as a reminder, the reason I do this live isn't to get an audience, but to, get my point across with the least amount of video editing. And I've said before on when I've done interviews, I only like doing live interviews because it seems more genuine instead of the fake bullshit that we get in our media. And the sun is going to come around the corner anytime soon. But I found the story that I was looking for last time. And I didn't really listen to my last one. I kind of went through it. I don't like listening to myself sometimes, but that's okay. But the story of Leela reminds me of imagination, right? And it's viewing every single thing as having its own universe. Like every single person is an entire universe in themselves internally. The microcosm of man is an exact replica of the macrocosm of the universe. And because we have a universe inside of us. And we are part of the universe, like an organ is a part of the body or a cell. And Leela's adventure is how, she wants to be with her husband, and all these different things happen in order for her to realize that she is herself. And she, the one thing that I've actually come into a greater appreciation since my head injury is, the story sits well with me. And even though I can't recall a lot of things because of it, or I can only recall certain things because of it, that story spoke to me, and it still speaks to me, especially in the nature of love. And my dog just puked. Nice job. But the story I was looking for was actually a story that comes afterwards, not before, like I had previously thought. And this is the story of Sukra. And I guess it's fitting that we started with Leela, because Leela is about living this life and searching for, love and the answers and liberation from the current state of affairs, and realizing that you yourself are already the supreme self, and you just have to realize it. But this is the story of Sukra. I'm gonna go get my water bottle. All right. And there's this story. It is this story. Sukra was the son of Burgu, the sage. And during this story, well, I mean, it will explain the story. But I really like this because this is a conversation between a sage and death itself, himself, herself. Right. The story of Sukra. Vasistha continued, "O Rama, the only way to cross this formidable ocean of world appearance is the successful mastery of the senses. No other effort is of any use. When one is equipped with the wisdom gained by study of the scriptures and the company of sages, and has his senses under control, He realizes the utter non-existence of all objects of perception. Rama, mind alone is all of this, and when that is healed, this jugglery of world appearance is also healed. This mind alone, by its thinking faculty, conjures up what is known as the body. No body is seen where the mind does not function. Hence, the treatment of the psychological illness known as perception of objects is the best of all treatments in this world. The mind creates delusion. The mind produces ideas of birth and death, and as a direct result of its own thoughts, it is bound and it is liberated. Rama asked, O holy sage, kindly tell me, how does this enormous universe exist in the mind? Vasistha replied, O Rama, it is like the universes created by the Brahmana boys. Again, it is like the hallucinations suffered by the king Lavana. There is another illustration. This is the story of the sage Sukra, which I shall presently narrate to you. A long time ago, the sage Burgu was performing intense penance on the peak of a mountain. His son Sukra was a young man at the time, and while the father sat motionless in meditation, the young son attended to the father's needs. One day, this young man beheld in the sky a beautiful flying nymph. His mind was disturbed with desire for her. So was her own mind disturbed when she saw the radiant young Sukra. Intensely overcome by desire for the nymph, Sukra closed his eyes and mentally pursued her. He reached heaven. There he saw the radiant celestial beings, gods and their consorts, the celestial elephant and horses. He saw the creator Brahma himself, as also the other deities who govern this universe. He saw the siddhas, perfect beings. He listened to celestial music. He visited the celestial gardens in heaven. Finally, he saw the king of heaven, Indra himself, seated in all his majesty, waited upon by incomparably beautiful nymphs. He saluted Indra. Indra too got up from his throne and greeted the young sage Sukra and begged him to stay in heaven for a long time. Sukra also consented to do so. Vasistha continued. Sukra had completely forgotten his previous identity. After spending some time in the court of Indra, Sukra roamed to the heaven and soon discovered the whereabouts of the nymph he had seen. When they looked at each other, they were overcome by desire for each other, for wish fulfillment is the characteristic of heaven. Sukra wished for the darkness of night to envelop the pleasure garden where he met the nymph. So it was dark. Sukra then entered the beautiful rest house in that garden. The nymph followed. She pleaded, Great one, I am tormented by desire for you. Only the dull-witted deride love, not the wise ones. Even the lordship of the three worlds is nothing compared to the delight of the company of the loved one. Hence, pray give me shelter in your heart. Saying so, she collapsed on his chest. Sukra spent a very long time with that nymph roaming at will in heaven. He lived with that nymph for a period equal to 8 world cycles. After this length of time, as if his merit had been exhausted, Sukra fell from heaven, along with that nymph. When their subtle bodies fell on earth, they became dewdrops which entered food grains which were eaten by a holy Brahmana, from whom his wife received their essence. Sukra became their son. He grew up there. The nymph had become a female deer, and Sukra begot through her a human child. He became greatly attached to this son. Worries and anxieties caused by this child soon aged Sukra, and he died longing for pleasures. On account of this, Sukra became the ruler of a kingdom in the next birth, and he died to that embodiment for a life of austerity and holiness. In the next birth, he became a holy man. Thus, after passing from one embodiment to another and enduring all manner of destinies, Sukra practiced intense austerity, standing firm on the bank of a river. Thus contemplating while seated in front of his father, Sukra spent a long time. His body had become extremely emaciated. In the meantime, the restless mind created scene after scene of successive lifespans, birth and death, ascent to heaven and descent to earth in the peaceful life of a hermit. He was so immersed in these that he regarded them as truth. The body had been reduced to skin and bone, for it had been assailed by the inclemencies of every type of weather. It appeared terribly frightened even to look at, yet it was not consumed by carnivorous beasts. as it stood right in front of the sage Burgu, who was engaged in deep meditation, and as Sukra himself had endowed it with his psychic strength through the practice of yogic discipline. After 100 celestial years of contemplation, the sage Burgu got up from his seat. He did not see his son Sukra in front of him, but saw the dried up body. The body appeared hideous, an abode of worms which, dwelling in the eye sockets, had multiplied very fast indeed. Deeply concerned with what he saw, and without really reflecting over the natural course of events, Burgu was filled with rage and resolved to curse time for thus causing the untimely death of his son. Time, or death, instantly approached the sage in physical form. Time had a sword in one hand and a noose in the other. He had impenetrable armor. He had 6 arms and 6 faces. He was surrounded by a host of his servants and messengers. He was radiant with the flames of destruction that emanated from his body and from the weapons that he held in his hands. Calmly and in an unfaltering voice, Time thus addressed Burgu. O sage, how is it that such a wise sage as you are contemplating such unworthy conduct? Wise men are not upset even when they are offended, yet you have lost your balance of mind even though no one has offended you. You are indeed an adorable person, and I am one of those who strictly adhere to the appropriate mode of behavior. Hence, I salute you, not with any other motive. Do not waste your merit in useless exhibition of your power to curse. Know that I am unaffected even by the fires of cosmic disillusion. How childish of you to hope to destroy me with your curse. I am time, and I have destroyed countless beings, nay, even the gods who preside over this universe. Holy One, I am the consumer, and you are our food. This indeed is ordained by nature. This relationship is not based on mutual likes or dislikes. Fire, by its very nature, flames upward, and water naturally flows down. Food seeks the consumer, and created objects seek their end. This is how it has been ordained by the Lord. In the self of all, the self dwells as itself. To the purified vision, there is neither a doer nor an enjoyer, but to the unpurified vision which sees division, such a division seems to exist. You are indeed a knower of truth, and you know that there is neither doership nor non-doership here. Creatures come and go like flowers on trees. Their causation is naught else than conjecture. All these are attributed to time. This can be considered real or unreal, for when the surface of the lake is agitated, the reflection of the moon seems to be agitated. This can be considered both true and false. Time continued. Do not give way to anger, O sage. That is surely the path to disaster. For what will be, will be. Realize this truth. We are not swayed by vanity. We are naturally inclined to the fulfillment of our natural functions. Such indeed is the nature of wise ones. What has to be done has to be done by wise men here, remaining egoless and unselfish as if in deep sleep. Do not let this be violated. Where is your wisdom, your greatness, and your moral courage, O sage? Though you know the path to blessedness, why do you act like a fool? Surely you know that the right fruit falls to the ground. Ignoring this, why do you think of cursing me? Surely you know that everyone has 2 bodies, the one physical and the other mental. The physical one is insentient and seeks its own destruction. The mind is finite but orderly, but that mind is disturbed in you. The mind makes the body dance to its tunes, bringing about successive changes in it, like the child playing with mud. Mental actions alone are actions. Its thoughts cause bondage, and its own pure state is liberation. It is the mind that creates the body with all its limbs. Mind itself is both the sentient and the insentient beings. All this is endless diversity. All this endless diversity is nothing but mind. Mind itself is in its function as determination is known as the intellect, and in its function as identification is known as the ego sense. The physical body is only physical matter, yet the mind deems it as its own. Yet, if the mind turns towards the truth, it abandons its identification with the body and attains the supreme. O sage, while you were engaged in contemplation, your son went far, far away in his own fancy. He left here the body which was the son of Burgu and rose up to the heaven. There in heaven he enjoyed the celestial nymphs. In course of time, when his merit had been exhausted by such enjoyment, he fell down on earth like ripe fruit along with the nymph. He had to leave his celestial body in heaven. He fell on earth to be born with a physical body. Here on earth, he had to undergo a series of births. He was successfully a Brahmana boy, a fisherman, a king, a swan, again a king, a great yogi with psychic powers, a celestial demigod, the son of a sage, a king again, and again the son of a sage. And on account of evil deeds, he became a hunter, a king, and then as worms and plants, a donkey, a bamboo, a deer in China, a snake, a bird, and once again a demigod, and now once again he has become the son of a Brahmana, known as Vasudeva. He is well read in the scriptures and is at present engaged in penance on the bank of the holy river Samanga. Vasistha continued. Encouraged by Yama, time, the sage Burgu thereupon entered into the eye of wisdom in order to behold the life of his son. In an instant, he saw his own intelligence, the entire story of his son's transmigration. Wonderstruck at what he saw, he re entered his own body. Completely devoid of all attachment to his son, Burgu said, Lord, you are indeed the knower of the past, present, and future, whereas we are of little understanding. This world appearance, which, though unreal, appears to be real, deludes even the heroic man of wisdom. Surely all this is within you, and only you know the true form of this phantom created by the imaginations of the mind. This son of mine is not dead, yet taking him to be dead, I became agitated. I thought that my son had been taken away from me before his time arrived. Lord, though we understand the course of earthly events, we are moved to joy and sorrow by what we consider as good fortune and misfortune. In this world, anger impels man to do what should not be done, but tranquility enables one to do what should be done. As long as there exists the delusion of world existence, so long the distinction between appropriate and inappropriate action is valid. It is inappropriate that we should be agitated by your natural function, which is to cause the apparent death of beings here. By your grace, I have seen my son again, and I realize that mind alone is the body, and it is the mind that conjures up this world vision. Time replied, Well said, O sage. Truly, mind is the body. It is the mind that creates the body by mere thoughts, just as the potter makes a pot. It creates new bodies and brings about the destruction of what exists, and all this by a mere wish. It is surely obvious that within mind exists the faculties of delusion or hallucination, dreaming, and irrational thought, which creates this pie in the sky. Even so, it creates the appearance of the body within itself, but the ignorant man with a gross physical vision sees the physical body as different from and independent of the mind. The three worlds of waking, dream, and sleep are nothing but the expressions of the faculties of the mind. This expression can be considered neither real nor unreal. When the mind, conditioned by the perception of diversity, sees, it sees the diversity. Time continued. The mind itself gets involved in this world appearance by entering countless notions like I am weak, unhappy, foolish, etc. When the understanding arises that all this is but the false creation of the mind, I am what I am, then the peace of the Supreme arises in one's consciousness. The mind is like a vast ocean with infinite variety of creatures within it, on the surface of which ripples and waves of different sizes rise and fall. The small wave thinks it is small, the big one that it is big. The one that is broken by the wind thinks it has been destroyed. The one that thinks it is cold, another thinks that it is warm. But all the waves are but the water of the ocean. It is indeed true to say that there are no waves in the ocean. The ocean alone exists. Yet it is also true that there are waves. Even so, the absolute Brahman alone exists. Since it is omnipotent, the natural expression of it is of its infinite faculties appear as the infinite diversity in this universe. Diversity has no real existence except in one's own imagination. All this is indeed the absolute Brahman. Remain established in this truth. Give up all other notions. Even as the waves, etc., are non-different from the ocean, all these things are non-different from Brahman. Even as in the seed is hidden the entire tree in potential, in Brahman there exists the entire universe forever. Even as the multicolored rainbow is produced by sunlight, all this diversity is seen in the one. Even as the inert web emanates from the living spider, this inert world appearance has sprung from the infinite consciousness. Even as the silkworm weaves its cocoon and thus binds itself, the infinite being fancies this universe and gets caught in it. Even as an elephant effortlessly breaks loose from the post to which it is tied, the self liberates itself from its bondage. For the self is what it considers itself to be. In fact, there's neither bondage nor liberation for the Lord. I do not know these notions of bondage or how these notions of bondage or liberation have come into being. There is neither bondage nor liberation, only that infinite being is seen. Yet the eternal is veiled by the transient, and this is indeed a great wonder or a great illusion. The moment this mind manifested in the infinite consciousness, there also arose the notions of diversity, and these notions exist in the infinite consciousness. On account of this, there appear to exist in this universe the various deities and the innumerable species of creations, some long lived, others short lived, some big, some small, some happy, some unhappy. All these living entities are but notions in the infinite consciousness. Some consider themselves ignorant and bound, others are free from ignorance and liberated. Time continues. O sage, gods, demons, and human beings are non-different from this cosmic ocean of consciousness known as Brahman. This is the truth. All other assertions are false. They, the gods, etc., entertain false notions like I am not the absolute, and thus superimpose upon themselves impurity and the feeling of downfall. Even they dwell forever in this cosmic ocean of consciousness, yet considering themselves separate from Brahman, they are deluded. Though they are forever pure, they superimpose impurity on themselves, and this is the seed of all their actions and their consequences: happiness, unhappiness, ignorance, and enlightenment. Of these beings, some are pure like Shiva and Vishnu, some are slightly tainted like men and gods, some are in dense delusion like trees and shrubs, and some are blinded by ignorance like worms. Some wander far, far from wisdom, and some reach the state of enlightenment and liberation like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Through revolving thus in the wheel of ignorance and delusion, when one steps on to the wisdom concerning the supreme truth, he is instantly redeemed. Of these, neither they who are like the trees firmly rooted in delusion, nor they who have utterly destroyed their delusion need engage themselves in the inquiry into the scriptures. The scriptures themselves have been produced by enlightened beings for the guidance of those who have been awakened from the slumber of ignorance after their evil nature and its expressions have ceased to be, and whose intellect naturally seeks such scriptural guidance. O sage, it is only the mind that experiences pleasures and pains in this world, not the physical body of beings. In fact, the physical body is nothing but the fruit of fancy of the mind. The physical body is not an existential fact independent of the mind. Whatever your son willed in his own mind, that he experiences. We are not responsible for this. All beings here in this world obtain only those actions which spring from the storehouse of their own potentialities and predispositions. No one else is responsible for those actions, no superhuman being or God. Come, let us go where your son is engaged in penance after momentarily enjoying the pleasures of the heavens. Thus, death caught hold of Burgu and led him away. While the sage Vasistha said this, the 8th day came to a close and the assembly dispersed. Vasistha continued the next day. O Rama, the sage Burgu and the deity presiding over time proceeded towards the bank of the river Samanga. As they were descending the Mandra mountain, they saw beautiful forests inhabited by perfected and enlightened sages. They saw mighty elephants in rut. They saw other perfected sages who were being playfully pelted with flowers by celestial nymphs. They saw Buddhists or enlightened monks roaming the forest, and they descended into the plains dotted with villages and cities. Very soon they had reached the bank of the river Samanga. There the sage Burgu saw his son, who had another body and whose nature was different from what it was before, who was of a peaceful disposition and whose mind was established in the tranquility of enlightenment. Though he was deeply reflecting the destiny of living beings in the universe, this radiant young man appeared to have reached total quiescence of mind, and in which the play of thoughts and counterthoughts had ceased. He was absolutely pure, like a crystal that is not interested even in reflecting what is around it. There was no thought in his mind of either this to be obtained or this to be avoided. Time pointed out this young man and said to Burgu, "This is your son." Sukra heard the words, "Get up," and gently opened his eyes. Seeing the two radiant beings standing in front of him, he greeted them appropriately and seated them on a rock. In soft and sweet words, he said, "O divine beings, I am truly blessed to behold both of you. By your very presence before me, the delusions of my mind have been destroyed. Delusions which are not destroyed either by the study of scriptures, or by austerities, or by wisdom, or by knowledge. Even a shower of nectar is not so blissful as the sight of holy ones. The very earth trodden upon your feet, by your feet, is holy." The sage Burgu said to him, "Recollect yourself, for you are not an ignorant person." Sukra was instantly awakened to the memory of his previous existences, which he beheld with his eyes closed for a brief period. Sukra said, "Behold, I have passed through countless embodiments and through countless experiences of pain and pleasure, wisdom and delusion. I have been a cruel king, a greedy trader, and a wandering ascetic. There is no pleasure that I have not enjoyed, no action I have not performed, no unhappiness or happiness I have not endured. Now I wish for nothing, nor do I wish to avoid anything. Let nature take its course. Come, father, let us go to where the previous body stands, dried up." Vasistha continued. Soon they arrived at the palace where the body of Sukra, the son of Burgu, lay in an advanced condition of decay. Looking at this, Sukra wailed, "Ha! Look at this body which was admired and adored even by celestial nymphs. Now it is the abode of worms and vermin. The body which was smeared with sandal paste is now covered with dust. O body, you are now known as a corpse, and you are truly frightening to me. Even wild beasts are afraid of your dreadful appearance. Totally devoid of sensations, this body remains in a state of utter freedom from thoughts and ideas. Freed from the goblin of the mind, it remains unaffected even by natural calamities. Rid of the frolics of the restless monkey, known as the mind, this tree of body has fallen uprooted. It is indeed good fortune that I am able to see this body liberated from sorrow in this dense forest." Rama interrupted. "Holy sir, even though, as you have just said, Sukra had passed through countless embodiments, why is it that he bemoaned the fate of the body which was born of Burgu?" Vasistha replied, "Rama, it is because all of the bodies were the hallucination of this original body. which was that of Sukra, the son of sage Burgu. Soon after creation, at the end of the previous dissolution, on account of the will of the infinite consciousness, the jiva, or the living soul, which became the food that entered the body of the sage Burgu, was later born as Sukra. It was in that embodiment that this soul had all the rites and rituals appropriate to the birth of a Brahmana boy. Why did Sukra, now known as Vasudeva, bemoan that body? Whether one is wise or ignorant, as long as the body lasts, its functions continue unaltered according to its nature. As the embodied person functions as it is appropriate in the world, either attached or unattached. The difference between the two lies in their mental dispositions. In the case of the wise, these are liberating, and in the case of the ignorant, these are binding. As long as there is the body, so long shall pain be painful and pleasure pleasant. But the wise are not attached to either. Rejoicing in joy and suffering in suffering, the great ones appear to behave like the ignorant, though in fact they are enlightened. He whose sense organs are free, but whose organs of actions are restrained, is liberated. He whose sense organs are bound, but whose organs of action are free and unrestrained, is in bondage. The wise behave appropriately in society, though outwardly they are free of all need to conform. O Rama, renounce all cravings and longings and do what needs to be done in the realizations that you are forever the pure and infinite consciousness. The Sista continues. Hearing the young ascetic Vasudeva mourning the fate of his previous body, time, or death, intervened and said to Sukra. Death spoke. O son of Burgu, abandon this body of yours. What? And re-enter your other body, even as a king re-enters his kingdom. With that other body of Sukra, once again engage yourself in penance and then become the spiritual preceptor of the demons. At the end of the epoch, you will give up that body, never to become embodied again. Having said this, death vanished at that very place. Thereupon Sukra abandoned the body of Vasudeva, in which he had performed intense penance on the bank of the river Samanga, and re-entered the decayed body of Sukra, the son of the sage Burgu. At that very moment, the body of Vasudeva fell down like an uprooted tree and became a corpse. The sage Burgu sprinkled the body of Sukra with the holy water from his own water pot, uttering sacred hymns which had the power to revive that body, clothing it with flesh, etc. Instantly, that body became youthful and radiant as it was before. Sukra got up from the meditative posture and, seeing his father, the sage Burgu, standing in front of him, fell prostrate at his feet. Burgu was delighted to see his son thus resurrected from the dead and fondly embraced him, smiling happily all the while. The feeling of affection at the thought, "This is my son," overcame even the sage Burgu. This is natural. As long as there is body consciousness, both of them rejoiced at this happy reunion. Both Burgu and Sukra then performed the funeral rites on the body of the Brahmana boy Vasudeva, for thus do men of wisdom honor social customs and traditions. Both of them then shone with the radiance of the sun and the moon. They who were surely the spiritual preceptors of the whole universe roamed the world. Established firmly in the infinity of the knowledge of the self, they remained unmoved by the changes that took place in time and in the environment. In the course of time, Sukra became the spiritual preceptor of the demons, and his father Burgu became one of the sages of the highest wisdom. Such is the story of the sage Sukra, who on account of his infatuation with a nymph, wandered in countless wombs. Rama asked, Holy Sir, why does not the wish of others materialize as the wish of Sukra materialized in his ascent to heaven? Vasista replied, Sukra's mind was pure. Since that was his first embodiment, that mind was not loaded with the impurities of other previous embodiments. That mind is pure, which all cravings are in a state of quiescence. Whatever that pure mind wishes, that materializes. Whatever happens in this respect to Sukra is possible for everyone else. The world exists in each living soul. The world exists in each living soul in a seed state and becomes manifest like the tree sprouting from the seed. The world is thus falsely fancied by each individual. The world neither arises nor sets, all this is nothing but the fancy of the deluded mind. Within each one there is a fancy world. Even as one dreams are unknown to others, one's world is unknown to others. There are goblins and demigods and demons, all of which are embodiments of delusion. Even so, we have come unto being, O Rama, out of pure thought force, and consider the false to be real. Such indeed is the origin of creation in the infinite consciousness. Materiality is not factual, though it is perceived in emptiness. Everyone thus fancies his own world. When this truth is realized, the world thus fancies comes to an end. This world exists only in appearance or imagination, and not because one sees the material substances. It is like a long dream or a juggler's trick. It is the post to which the mind elephant is tied. The mind is the world, and the world the mind. When one is realized as not true, both of them vanish. When the mind is purified, it reflects the truth, and the unreal world appearance vanishes. The mind is purified by persistent contemplation of truth. Rama asked, how did the succession of births arise in the mind of Sukra? Vasistha replied, Sukra had been taught by his father Burgu concerning the succession of births, and this teaching had conditioned Sukra's mind, which conjured up the expansion of such conditioning. Only when the mind is totally purified of all conditioning does it regain its utter purity. That pure mind experiences liberation. The diversity that is seen in this creation, O Rama, is but an appearance of diversity. Evolution or involution has the one infinite consciousness as its source and as its goal. During evolution, there seems to be an apparent diversity in the one infinite consciousness, in accordance with the notions that appear in that consciousness. Some of these notions intermingle, thus producing infinite variety in this diversity. Some do not thus intermingle, but in fact, all these notions appear in every atom of existence, and these atoms exist independent of one another. The totality is known as the absolute Brahman. Each individual sees only these objects which are rooted in his own mind. When these ideas in the mind do not bear fruits, there is a change in the mind. There follows a succession of births to suit these psychological changes. It is this psychological connection that creates the conviction in the reality of birth and death, and in the reality of the body. When this conviction is given up, there is a cessation of embodiment. It is only because of forgetfulness of truth that the confusion arises that the unreal is real. By the purification of the life force prana, and by the knowledge of that which is beyond this prana or life force, one gains knowledge of all that is to be known concerning the activities of the mind, as well as the basis for the succession of births. The self of all living beings passes through the three states: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. They have nothing to do with the body. Even this is based on the assumption of the existence of living beings in the one self, which is not the truth. The wise man who goes beyond the deep sleep state, which is pure consciousness, returns to the source. But the fool who does not is caught up in this life cycle. Since the consciousness is infinite, one is led from one life cycle to another, even beyond the world cycle. Such creations are endless, one appearing within another like the bark of a plantain stem. Of course, it is unwise to compare Brahmana, the Absolute, with anything. One should inquire into that which is truly the uncaused cause of all substances, which is yet beyond all causation. This alone is worth inquiring into, for this alone is the essential. Why inquire into the non-essential? Vasistha continued, O Rama, the tree in a seed grows out of it after destroying the seed, but Brahman creates this world without destroying itself. The tree, the world, appears even when the seed Brahma is as it is. Hence, it is impossible to compare the incomparable Brahma with anything whatsoever. Whereas the tree, etc., are definable material substances, Brahman is nameless and formless in being. It is Brahma alone that becomes what appears to be of a different nature, yet from another point of view, it does not so become, for it is eternal and changeless. One cannot therefore posit anything concerning Brahman. It is not possible to say that it has not become all this, nor is it possible to say that it has become all of this. When the self is seen as an object, the seer is not seen or realized. As long as the objective universe is perceived, one does not realize self. When you see the mirage as water, you do not perceive the rising hot air. But when you perceive the hot air, you do not see the water in the mirage. When one is truth, the other is not. The eyes which perceive all the objects of the world do not see themselves. As long as one entertains the notion of objectivity, the self is not realized. Brahman is as subtle as pure as space and pure as space. It cannot be realized by any effort whatsoever. As long as one sees what is seen with the inner feeling that they are objects of perception, himself being their separate seer or objects. The realization of Brahman is far indeed. It is only when the division between the seer and the seen is given up, only when the two are seen as of one substance, that the truth is realized. There is no object which can be totally of a different nature from the subject, nor can the subject self be seen as if it were an object. In fact, the subject alone appears as the sight of the seen, the self, and the object. There is no other object of perception here. If again the subject or the self alone is all this, then surely it is not even the subject or the seer. There is no division in such a vision. Just as sugar becomes diverse sweetmeats without ever losing its natural sweetness, this infinite consciousness or Brahman visualizes itself as all this infinite diversity without ever divesting itself of its essential nature. There is no limit whatsoever to the manifestation of this infinite consciousness. Vasistha continues. Each living soul experiences within itself whatever and however it has been given rise to within itself with the help of its own life force. O Rama, behold with the eye of your own inner wisdom the truth that in every atom of existence there are countless world appearances. In everyone's mind, in the very space, in every rock, in the flame of fire, and in the water there exists countless world appearances, even as oil exists in sesame seed. It is when the mind becomes absolutely pure that it becomes pure consciousness and therefore one with the infinite consciousness. This world appearance is but a long dream which manifests everywhere, being the imagination of Brahma, the creator, and all others. The objects thus born in the creator's dream migrate from dream to dream, from the embodiment to embodiment, thus generating the illusory solidity of this world appearance. This dream-like appearance is yet true during the period of the dream itself. Within every atom is the potential experience of every kind, even as the seed contains within itself the different aspects of the tree, flowers, leaves, fruits, etc. Within every atom of existence there is the infinite consciousness, hence it is indivisible. Therefore, give up all your notions of diversity or unity. Time, space, action, motion, and matter are all but different aspects of the one infinite consciousness, and consciousness experiences them within itself, whether it happens to be the body of the creator Brahman or that of a worm. An atom of consciousness, when it attains to the fully grown state of a body, experiences its own faculties. Someone perceives the objects spread out as if outside because the infinite consciousness is omnipresent. Others behold everything within, evolving and devolving alternately. Some go from one dream experience to another, wandering in this world experience. The very rare few realize that the world appearance seen within themselves is illusory, except as the one infinite consciousness which alone is ever true. On account of this consciousness, the world appearance in the living soul. The world appears in the living soul, and there are living souls within living souls ad infinitum. It is when one thus experiences the truth that he is freed from illusion. At the same time, one's craving for pleasure is thinned out. This is the only proof of wisdom. A painted pot of nectar is not nectar, nor a painted flame fire, or a painting of a woman is not a woman. Wise words are mere words. Wise words are mere words, not wisdom, unless they are substantiated by the absence of desire and anger. Vasista continues. The very seed for all living souls, which is the absolute Brahman, exists everywhere, and within the living souls there are countless other living souls. All this is because the entire universe is totally permeated with the infinite consciousness. Upon their appearance as the Visukika, whatever type of contemplation they adopt, they soon become of the same nature. They who are devoted to the gods reach the gods. They who adore the demigods attain the demigods. They who contemplate the absolute Brahma become Brahma. Hence, one should resort to that which is not limited, conditioned, or infinite or finite. By contemplating the form of the nymph, Sukra was bound, and when he realized the purity of his self, which is infinite consciousness, he was instantly liberated. Rama asked, Holy Sir, pray tell me of the true nature of the waking and the dreaming states. What constitutes the waking state, and how does dream or delusion in the waking state arise? One second. Drink of water. Okay. This is the answers. That state which endures is known as the waking state. That which is transient is the dream state. During the period of even the dream, it takes on the characteristics of the waking state. And when the waking state is realized to be of a fleeting nature, it gets the characteristics of dream. Otherwise, the two are the same. When the life force in the body stirs, the various organs of thought, word, and deed perform their functions. They flow towards their objects of perception in accordance with the deluded notions that prevail in the mind. This life force perceives diverse forms within the self. Since this perception seems to be of an enduring nature, it is known as the waking state. But when the life force is not thus diverted by the mind and body, it remains rooted in peace within the heart. There is no movement of consciousness in the nerves of the body, nor does the life force activate the senses. However, that consciousness, which is awake even in deep sleep, and which is also the light that shines in waking and dreaming, is the transcendental consciousness, Turiya. When again the seeds of ignorance and delusion expand, there arise the first thought, which is the thought, I am. Then one perceives thought forms within the mind in dream. At this time, the external sense organs do not function, but the inner senses function, and there is perception within oneself. This is the dream state. When the life force again activates the sense organs, once again, there is wakefulness. Vasista continues, I have described the states of the mind just to enable you to understand the nature of the mind. It has no other use, for mind takes on the form of that which it intensely contemplates. Existence, non-existence, gaining, and renouncing, all these are no more than moods of the mind. Rama asked, if mind is all this, Lord, how does it ever get tainted? Vasista replies, this is a beautiful question, Rama, but not the proper time to ask. When you have listened to what I have to say, you will surely find the answer to this question with the utmost clarity. That the mind is impure is the experience of everyone who strives for liberation. Depending upon one's particular point of view, everyone describes it differently. Just as air coming into contact with different flowers takes on their scent, so mind entering different notions takes on those moods, creates bodies suitable to them, and, as the energy activates the senses, enjoys the fruition of its own notions. It is the mind again that provides the fuel for the functioning of the organs of action. Mind is action, and action is mind. The two are like the flower and its scent. The conviction of the mind determines the action, and the action strengthens the conviction. Mind is everywhere devoted to dharma, wealth, pleasure, and freedom, but everyone has a different definition of these and is convinced that that definition is the truth. Even so, the followers of certain sages and others assert that theirs is the only path to liberation. Their philosophies are the expression of their experiences, which are the fruit of their own practice, which is in accordance with the convictions of their mind. Rama. Bondage is none other than the notion of an object. This notion is Maya, ignorance, etc. It is the cataract that blinds one to the sun of truth. Ignorance raises a doubt. Doubt perceives. That perception is perverted. In darkness, when one approaches even a lion's empty cage, he is afraid. Even so, one ignorantly believes he is imprisoned in this empty body. The notions of I and the world are but shadows, not truth. Such notions alone create objects. These objects are neither true nor false. A mother who considers herself a housekeeper behaves like one. A wife who considers herself her husband's mother behaves like one for the time being. Therefore, Rama, abandon the notions of I and this and remain established in the truth. The sister continues. He who acquires wisdom through self-inquiry and possession possesses the following qualifications, enjoys clarity of self-knowledge, even as water becomes clear when a piece of alum is thrown into it. His mind is undisturbed by modifications. His being has been transmuted. Having attained what is worth attainment, self-knowledge, he has abandoned the very notion of objectivity. Since the seer alone sees, he does not regard any other factor as the seer or subject. He is fully awake in the supreme truth. Hence, he is totally asleep, as it were, in the world appearance. His dispassion being pervasive. He is disinterested in pleasure, and its opposite. His cravings have ceased, even as the restlessness of rivers cease upon their entering the ocean. He has cut the net of world appearance, even as a mouse cuts the snare. It is only when the mind has become devoid of all attachment, when it is not swayed by the pairs of opposites, when it is not attracted by objects, and when it is totally independent of all supports, that it is freed from the cage of delusion. When all doubt comes to rest, and when there is neither elation nor depression, when the mind shines like the full moon, when the impurities of the mind have ceased to be, there arise in the heart all the auspicious qualities, and there is equal vision everywhere. Even as darkness is dispelled by the rising sun, the world illusion is dispelled when the sun of infinite consciousness arises in the heart. Such wisdom is capable of gladdening the hearts of all beings in the universe. Such wisdom as is capable of gladdening the hearts of all beings in the universe manifests and expands. In short, he who has known that which alone is worth knowing transcends all coming and going, birth and death. Even the gods Brahma, Vishnu, Indra, Shiva are sympathized with and assisted by the holy ones in whom self-knowledge has arisen through self-inquiry or direct observation. When there is absence of egoism, there is no confusion in the mind when that mind functions naturally. Just as waves rise and fall in the ocean, the worlds arise and vanish. This deludes the ignorant, but not the wise. The space in a pot does not come into being when the pot is brought in, nor is it destroyed when the pot is broken. He who knows that such is the relationship between his body, the pot, and the self, space, is not influenced by praise or censure. This glamorous world appearance haunts one only as long as one does not engage oneself in inquiry into the nature of the self. When wisdom arises, delusion sets. Vasistha continues, O Rama, he who sees the truth, he sees the truth who sees the body as a product of deluded understanding and as the fountain source of misfortune, and who knows that the body is not the self. He sees the truth who sees that in his body pleasure and pain are experienced on account of the passage of time in which one is placed, and that they do not pertain to him. He sees the truth who sees that he is the omnipresent infinite consciousness which encompasses within itself all that takes place everywhere at all times. He sees the truth who knows that the self, which is as subtle as the millionth part of the tip of a hair divided a million times, pervades everything. He sees the truth who sees that there is no division at all between the self and the other, and that the one infinite light of consciousness exists as the sole reality. He sees the truth who sees that the non dual consciousness which indwells all beings is omnipotent and omnipresent. He sees the truth who is not deluded into thinking that he is the body which is subject to illness, fear, agitation, old age, and death. He sees the truth who sees that all things are strung in the self as beads are strung on a thread, and who knows that I am not the mind. He sees the truth who sees that all this is Brahma, neither I nor the other. He sees the truth who sees all beings in the three worlds as his own family, deserving of his sympathy and protection. He sees the truth who knows that the self alone exists and that there is no substance in objectivity. He is unaffected who knows that pleasure, pain, birth, death, etc. are all the self only. He is established firmly in the truth who feels, what should I acquire? What should I renounce when all this is the one self? Salutations to that abode of auspiciousness who is filled with the supreme realization that the entire universe is truly Brahma alone, which remains unchanged during the apparent creation, existence, and dissolution of the universe. Vasistha continues, Rama, he who treads the superior path, though he dwells in this body which functions as the potter's wheel does by past momentum, is untainted by the actions that might be performed. In his case, the body exists for his pleasure and for the liberation of his soul. He does not experience unhappiness in it. To the ignorant, this body is the source of suffering, but to the enlightened man, this body is the source of infinite delight. While it exists, the wise man derives from it great pleasure and the delight of enlightenment. When its lifespan comes to an end, he does not regard it as a loss at all. Hence, to the enlightened person, the body itself is a source of infinite delight. And since it transports him in this world in which he roams freely and delightfully, the body is regarded as a vehicle of wisdom. Since it is through the body that the wise man derives the different sense experiences and gains the friendship and affection of others, to him it is a source of gain. The enlightened man reigns happily while dwelling in the city known as the body, even as Indra, the king of heaven, dwells in his city. The body does not subject the wise man to the temptations of lust and greed, nor does it allow ignorance or fear to invade him. The intelligence that governs the wise man's body is not drawn out by the excitement which the ignorants call pleasure, but it rests within a state of contemplation. The embodied being comes lightly into contact with the body while it lasts, but is untouched by it once it is gone, even as air touches a pot which exists, but not once that does not exist. Just as the most deadly poison which was drunk by the Lord Shiva did not harm him, but enhance his charm, the varied actions and enjoyments of an enlightened person do not bind him to the cycle of birth and death. Just as if you know someone is a thief and deal with him with that knowledge, he becomes your friend. When you enjoy the objects, knowing their true nature, they give you joy. The wise man who is rid of all doubts and in whom there is no image of self reigns supreme in the body. Therefore, one should abandon all cravings for pleasure and attain wisdom. Only the mind that has been well disciplined really experiences happiness. The captive king, when freed, is delighted with a piece of bread. The king who has not been subject to captivity does not enjoy as much, even should it be the annexation of another kingdom. Hence, the wise man grinds his teeth and strives to conquer his mind and senses. Such conquest is far greater than conquest of any external foe. And that is the story of Sukra. And I really actually like this story, mostly because, like the new God of War game is about Kratos and his son, this is about Burgu and his son and his relationship. Um, and if we're going to take everything so far together, as I read the Bhagavad Gita earlier, and that is about doing your duty on this world. It is a conversation between the Prince Arjun of the Pandavas and the Lord Krishna, who is the supreme Godhead in the Mahabharata. And that one, that book right there got me through. I really wish I would have read it in 2011, but then I probably wouldn't have gone about following my heart like I did with the whole bullshit that I've been doing with the whole whistleblowing thing. But I always had trouble in I understood duty from the military and studying that, and growing up as a Christian, you're talking about duty to God, duty to family. But even the samurai have a very well-defined sense of duty, and there's the duty to the self, duty to who you are and development of that, but also that's only one center. Then there's the center of your relationships between other individuals. There's the center of your relationships between entire groups of people, your family, your friends, your society, even the societal center. And then there's a national center, a world center. Our if you think of it, that's like the solar system. There's a center of our solar system, our sun. We have within ourselves another center, which is exactly like the sun, our heart. And our mind revolves around that. Unlike our heart should not revolve around our mind. And then we have our body, which shouldn't be revolved around. Everything revolves around that center. And there's a lot of different teachings that I've been reading lately that keep focusing on that, the center of the heart. Not necessarily where the heart is, but the place between the solar blades, like the center of your being, the center of the self. And it's different than being self-centered, where we have people who are self-centered in the fact that they think that everything revolves around them, the entire universe revolves around them. But just like the earth rotates on an axis and has a center at its core, it still rotates around the sun. And just like our relationships with other people and other things, it's exactly the same thing. And what I like about all these things about the Vedic philosophies and the coming into that understanding of the self is that it's very different than a lot of Western philosophies. And I'm going to pick on Ayn Rand for a moment because I hate her. But because I see a lot of people, especially in Christian religious circles, use the objectivism to kind of twist the same story that I just told, in which it's all about the self, it's all about what I acquire, and that's the difference between understanding that you yourself are a part of one greater whole and seeing yourself as the center of everything. You know, you have the right to enjoy pleasure, but you do not have the right to take it from someone else. You know, there are different aspects in this. And when I was growing up, I never realized this until I was in the military and I was talking to some people. And in the military, Ayn Rand is a big, people like her. Don't know. But I like Terry Goodkind, or I did, with his Sort of Truth series. And in that series is a lot, very much based off of objectivism, but he kind of tries to mix both Ayn Rand's philosophy with a little bit of capitalism, if I'm gonna be honest here, um, and and somewhat of like, you know, the idea of duty from the Bhagavad Gita, where the main character Richard Rahl is has a duty as being someone who like was born with both sides of magic and first person born in 3,000 years because of some war that happened in the past. Like he everyone wants him to do shit based off of prophecy. And he's like, fuck that. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to follow my heart. I'm going to do what my heart says that I should do. But in a sense, Terry Goodkind takes from Ayn Rand's philosophy that, you know, we shouldn't be contribute to the betterment of others, because the enemy, the Haran, not the Haran, that's the first book. The Jagang's empire, the Great Empire, is a caricature of socialism and communism, and it's it's really bizarre to kind of read some of this and reflect upon it in the modern context of things. Because I wasn't really historically versed before I was imaginationarily versed. And since I developed my imagination and understanding of certain contexts before engaging in the world with it, I have I feel like um a nice clear vision of how ridiculous a lot of shit really is, especially the isms of socialism and capitalism. And because you can't run a society based off of any of those concepts. You know, there is a social circle, and there are rules that are engaged within a social circle that do not work engaged in something like capitalism business. And capitalism business has no right to rule over the people if it uses people in belaboring in belaboring for their profit. And just like, you know, in order for priests and we'll say scholars, learned people, and warriors to be pure in their actions, they can't be influenced by the money of the merchants. And you know, that's a big problem that we've got in Western societies. Everything is ran by the merchants. Everything is ran by them. They destroy our land, our property, our health, and everything for their own benefit, when they should be dealing solely with luxuries and not the basics. It should be the learned people who are educating the unlearned and the laborers on how to better themselves, because it's the laborers who earn the money and do the work for the merchants, and it is the warriors who protect everyone and make sure the system runs properly without judgment, but with uh, a very nice sense of discrimination, because we should be standing against all forms of dishonor. And each person has a role to play. Each character has a role to play that shouldn't be overlorded over the others. Like if we had priests in charge, we would have a theocracy, and that would not work for the merchants, nor the warriors, nor the laborers. And if we had a military dictatorship, that wouldn't work either. So everything has to be in balance. And I find that, you know, contemplating, I like the conversation with death that Bergu has with death. And so, one thing that I love about Bergu, I think I mentioned this before, is Sukra is the guru of the Asuras, which is the demons. So even in the Vedic mythology, like um, uh, the king of hell, God, I forgot his name. Bhima, I think was his name. Well, even the king of hell became enlightened and at one with God and or Brahma and was at peace. So in that universe that is described, heaven and hell celebrate and they are joined together in a golden age. And Sukra, being the guru of the Asuras, of course, gives wisdom to those who fight in the war between the devas or the gods and the Asuras. And at one point, Indra led a fight down on outside of Burgu's house, and Burgu's wife was kind of like, "Fuck this shit, you guys are misbehaving. Time out," and froze everybody. And so Indra calls Vishnu down from heaven and asks for freedom, and Vishnu, being the guardian of all, and you know, good, good or evil can come to him for a boon if they do the proper penance. He just fucking kills Burgu's wife, and so Burgu curses Vishnu to have 21 incarnations upon this world, and where Krishna is one of them, uh, Christ is one of them, um, Buddha's one of them, Rama, the character in the Sisters Yoga that I read, is one of them, and then Kalki apparently is another one of them, which is the guy who's supposed to come and clean up all the shit that's going on in the world and um, reestablish the kingdom of God on this world. And then like anything else, the cycle starts off over. So when we're coming out of this dark age of Kali Yuga up to the golden age, so probably right here we're about to see the rebuilding, and Kalki might make his appearance. Well, probably should have made his appearance on the blood moon, or was born then, or something. Whatever the current thing is, but the cycle is a real thing, and when it turns, it turns. But the thing I like about this story is that, you know, it Burgu, who is considered one of the wisest sages in the entire Vedic mythology. Even he does something stupid and foolish, and he curses death. And he bemoans the loss of his son, and then rejoices when his son comes back. And I just think that's a really beautiful story. And death plays this character where he shows he's like, I'm just the guide. I am just the person who just lets everything continue. I am the consumer of all things, but you can still be free from me and you can still find joy and happiness and love. And death doesn't necessarily have to be of the physical body. It can be of concepts and ideas and things that are internal and attachments. And once you are free of all those things, you can be yourself. And you can face life as a challenge rather than a curse. And I know probably the only people that are going to watch this are friends or family or the people that are spying on me. But you know, that's how I succeeded. Was I was impeccable with my intent, with my desire. I didn't lie. I never cheated. I never stole. I didn't, you know, I've talked with some. It's funny that The left in the United States calls me a monster, and the right call me a traitor, and that's pretty much when no one really wants to fucking deal with me here in the States. And because I have a higher standard of acceptability for human beings, pretty much everyone has dropped out of my life. That's why I share these things, is because sometimes you're going to have to experience these things as well, and you're going to lose people, and you have to determine, is your relationship worth abandoning the path? Is politics worth your health and your mental sanity? Is do what is right, do what thou wilt, is the full of the law. Love is the law, love under will. And I did my duty. You know what? I did it better than I could have ever expected. And I did it. And the ironic thing is I'm the person that the military trained me to be. I'm the person that my grandparents trained me to be, raised me to be, my mother taught me to be. And I am so happy with myself. I am my supreme self, and I only want others to have that realization as well. It is about contemplation. All of our universes, our internal worlds are different, but it's all part of the same thing, just like we each have different organs, but are all part of the same body. And we need more people to have that realization of their supreme self and go out into the world and do something about it. We can't have people destroying the lives and our planet for their own profit and think that they can get away with it. It's dishonorable in the highest sense. And I can speak on dishonor because I was a drone operator, and hunting people down through that methodology is the most dishonorable thing that I know. It is a coward's way of warfare, and according to every single book of warriorship and anything like that, I'm right. But I had to experience that myself. I went through it. I served honorably. I have an honorable discharge as a staff sergeant from the United States Air Force Special Forces Command. I mean, I have a clean record. And the only thing that happened to me in the military is that people tried to fuck with me. People were jealous because they couldn't do their duty and they were in the military for the wrong fucking reasons. Just like many people are today. Many people do a lot of shit for the wrong fucking reasons. Make sure that you do not. Or else you're just going to be in a cycle of life and death until you figure that shit out. I hope you have a wonderful day, and thank you for watching.